Welcome to the fourth video, and this time we're going to be talking about fat cells. So imagine that this sponge is a fat cell. Now a sponge soaks up water and then it dries out and then it soaks up water again, right? You get a little bit of water, that sponge will soak it right up. That's kind of the way a fat cell is too, unfortunately. A fat cell will sit there, and if it sees some fat, it will soak it up. And then if you work out really hard and dehydrate that fat cell, the fat cell will never go away. It still sits there. So you can lose weight, you can drop fat, but you'll never drop those fat cells. Those fat cells are with you for the rest of your life, unfortunately. And they're sitting there dehydrated, just waiting for the first drop of fat to come by, so it can grab it up. Now, if you think back through the history of mankind, this was kind of a survival skill, kind of a thing to get you through famine, right? Back in early ages, people would take the fall harvest, fatten up for the winter, and that would get them through the meek times of the winter time until the spring came. And so they needed those fat cells. They needed all that fat to get them through. Well, in the modern age, we don't need that, and that becomes a problem. So what you have to know is that once you have grown fat cells, those fat cells are with you for the rest of your life, whether you dehydrate them or not. And by dehydrating them, I mean if you lose weight, if you do what you have to do to lose fat, lose weight, those cells are still with you. Okay, now imagine there's two people, and they're sitting side by side, and both are going to eat a piece of chocolate cake. The person on the right side is super skinny. She's been skinny her whole entire life. The person on the left side just lost 30 pounds. Okay, now they're the same size, they look the same, from everything you can tell, the two women look exactly the same, and they're going to eat the same piece of chocolate cake. That chocolate cake's going to have different effects on the two women. The woman on the right, who has been skinny her whole life, that chocolate cake will enter her body, and there won't be any fat cells to absorb that fat. So if her body wants to retain those extra calories, it must produce fat cells. It must take some of that chocolate cake and calories and use those calories for the production of additional fat cells, so then it can store whatever remains after those fat cells are produced. Now the person on the left, who was previously fat, will have tons of fat cells sitting like sponges waiting for the fat to come through. So she'll eat that chocolate cake, and those fat cells will absorb it right away. No concern, no nothing. They're just, there you go. That's why you'll hear somebody say, I can just look at a piece of chocolate cake and it'll put 30 pounds on me. It's because they've got those fat cells in them. And other than surgically, there's no way to get those fat cells out. And I don't recommend surgically removing fat cells. So that's what you've got to deal with. This is, this diet isn't just something you're going to do today. You've got to think about lifestyle change now. You got some fat cells in there that would just love to suck up some extra calories that you might have eaten. Now, there is some good news out of this story, but there's also some bad news. And again, this is where I'm going right now is not scientifically based. It's my own personal experience based on how these fat cells tend to work over time. Now, over time, if you recently lost weight, those sponges are going to be much more pliable and much more hungrier to suck up fat. So if you drop 5 pounds and then you have a bad day at the buffet, you can put that 5 pounds right back on that fast. However, the longer those fat cells sit dried up, the harder it is for them to absorb those extra calories that come along. So let's say you lose weight, it's been 5 years, maybe it's been 10 years, and you go to the buffet and you eat a little bit too much, it's not going to have the same effect. So that's the good and the bad. Also, the good news is, let's flip it around a little bit. You go to the buffet, you have a bad day, and you put on a little bit of weight. It also comes off a lot faster. It's easier to dehydrate a cell that isn't very old. Flip side of that, if you've got some old weight that's been on you for 10 or 15 years, that's going to be the hardest weight to get off, because that's been sitting in your fat cells for a long time, and it's going to be really hard to dehydrate those. But brand new fat cells, it's going to be pretty easy to dehydrate those. Again, I don't have any science to back up what I just told you about time. It's easier over time or harder over time. That's just my experience. But hopefully, understanding how these fat cells work. Now, if you got a thyroidectomy and you put on weight and you're heavier than you ever had been before, you now have more fat cells than you ever had before. And that's something you got to deal with now. It's something you got to be careful of. And it can make weight loss plans and future going out into the future a little bit more difficult to deal with. But hopefully this helps you understand fat cells a little bit better.